Hi everyone. So what we have here is an HP 95LX that I have that's a parts machine. The screen isn't working properly. And I've taken it completely apart and I'm going to show you how to put it back together. There are a couple of tricky parts that, especially around the plastic frame that the screen goes into. So let's get started. So the first step here is to put the screen back together with the metal frame that I've removed. Usually you don't have to go this far, but I just wanted to show you all the steps. The screen only goes in one way. It won't drop into place properly. And you'll know you got it right when you can put it on and there's an even gap around both sides of the screen. So on the back you have 12 metal tabs that have to be bent back into place. And I just use a pair of pliers to grab the very tip of the tabs and bend them back until they're touching the metal that's on the printed circuit board. So those have to just go back into place. And I'm pushing the screen up with my fingers and just grabbing the very tip of the tabs and bending down. You don't want to grab the whole tab, or the entire tab will kind of get bent down into place, and that'll twist the frame. So you don't really want to do that. You just want the, oops, I was about to do that. The very tip of the tab goes back down, and then the same on the other side. Down, into place, into place. Just make that a little neater. There you go. So all the tabs are back in place. The metal frame is fixed in place, and we're ready to proceed. So for the next part, you grab the top of the case. That has the HP 95LX logo, and you have this anti-static metal shielding that just goes into the plastic case, and it's got all the little bumps and the cutout towards the bottom, towards the hinges. And these, you got to make sure these metal loops are around the screws. You just push that back down with your fingers, and there we go. And the last one, there we are. So that's pretty much that part's pretty much assembled. Now we're going to put the ribbon cable on the back of the screen. So now for the screen, first off, you have to put in the ribbon cable that connects the screen to the motherboard, and I have one right here. And the way it goes is the metal connectors go facing down. Screen gets into place all the way in, and then you just push the tab down, and the connector's in place. So it's the part that does 180 degrees towards the screen side, and the connector should just, as you can see, line up with the edge of the screen. And then that's going to go through the HP 95LX underneath, and at the bottom, connect to the bottom. It gets twisted on this side. So that is the ribbon cable back in place. So now we just get the screen into the plastic case and just drop it in place. Oops. And you have to be careful because there is a little plastic peg here. I don't know if you can see that in the video, but you have to put that, there's a little fastener, a little hole in the ribbon cable that has to go over that plastic peg and get pushed down, and it can be a little tricky. So what I like to do is kind of get that done first so it's in place, and then push the screen down and into its final position. And you can see that the ribbon cable goes right into the hinge on this side, just where the grounding is connected for that goes in the battery compartment. So that's half the screen put back together. Next up, we're going to put the front of the frame back on the screen. It goes like this. There's some snaps all around the screen that just hold it in place. You can just push down and you should hear should hear it connect and go into back into place there. So you'll have the ribbon cable coming out, and the grounding wire should actually be coming out of that little hole in the middle. You might have to kind of bend it into place, but when you're done, it should look something like this. Now we come to a tricky part, which is putting the hinge on the other side back together. This consists of these 4 pieces that you have to put together and get into the hinge, and it's not easy because the spring is very strong, and you will need a pair of pliers to get everything back in together. So let's tackle that next. So the hinge assembles like this. There is a metal part with a white plastic around it, and there's a little tab, and the little tab goes, you can see it in the frame. There's a gap at the back of the frame, right there towards the screen. That's where the tab is going to have to be indexed to. It holds the plastic in place, and the plastic gets squeezed when everything's together to give the some friction to the screen so it just doesn't flop around. Then the spring goes around the outside. Plastic tab goes on the back of it, and the whole thing has to be squeezed in while you slide it into the frame, and that's kind of the tricky part. Once it's all in there, the metal washer goes around the outside to hold everything in place, and then we can finally reassemble the screen onto the main body of the HP95LX. So let's get that in place. All right. So this is a tricky part. Lots of swearing, lots of tries to get this right. Try not to let the spring and anything go flying. It does happen. So get everything in there just loose, and the plastic tab is supposed to go against the hinge, and on this side we have to get the orientation of the outside plastic part right before we proceed. There we go. That's more or less right. And then you kind of have to squeeze down while you push the hinge together. Push down as far as you'll go. And once things are more or less in place, what I do is I grab a pair of pliers and I kind of squeeze that down. Oh, that hinge is not right. That's better. Kind of squeeze that down into place, and then try to get the O-ring around the outside. Or the washer, I mean. Oopsies. It's very, very tricky to get this right. What's happening here? I think I don't have the plastic part aligned correctly, or something. Yeah, it's at the back. It's not connecting correctly. And it's a pain because the ribbon cable just keeps getting into place. It keeps getting into the way. Yeah, and if it's not getting close enough to put the O-ring in, you really have to press the spring in. There we go. Almost there. probably gonna edit this down a little bit. It takes a while to get this right. There we go. Finally. So once that's in place, just push the washer down a teeny bit. It should be straight. There's only so far it can go. If it's crooked, just pull it out a little bit. And then your metal tab here, there should be quite a bit of tension in it. That's expected. But that's the frame of the screen I'll put back together again. As you can see, it's a pretty tricky part. It takes some doing to get right, and there were a lot of retries on my part and a lot of stuff off screen that happened to finally get this into place. Next, put the 4 screws back in, and then the cover that goes around the screen, and we'll tackle that next. All right, and here we are, ready to put the screws back on the screen. There are 4 screws. Luckily, all the screws on the HP95LX are the same, so there's nothing to get mixed up. You will need a star screwdriver to do the reassembly. Just get those back in. 2. 3. And the last one. All right. And then around the outside, you have the plastic frame that just drops into place. And you can press down. The glue should be good. If it's not, you'll just have to apply a little bit to the back. This one is obviously not going into place. We'd have to glue this in. I'm not going to do that right now. This is just to show you how to put the screen back together. So we have the screen assembly pretty much back in place, and now we can proceed with getting everything attached to the bottom here. Okay, so we're ready for another bit that's kind of tricky, is getting the screen on top of the keyboard assembly. When you put it back together, there's a hole for the metal tab of the hinge, and then on this side there's this is where the screen cover goes on, like that. It'll eventually slap into place. One of the gaps for the screen cover there, for the hinge cover, there is a little smaller slidey bit that you connects into there, and that's where this grounding wire goes. One thing you have to pay attention to is that the grounding wire goes through the central hole on the left hinge. If it doesn't, you'll have a lot of trouble putting the screen back together, so pay attention to that. And the metal part, just kind of like, you have to snake it in and down, and once it's into place, a little more, there you go. It should kind of look like this, and on the other side you can see where it's going to rest against the battery. So that part's done. It'll keep sliding in and out until we get everything assembled. The monitor cable goes through this section here. Let's get that back into place. You get this hinge on top of into the hole for the hinge, and that's what it should look like at this point. Okay, now the screen's in place, let's reassemble the hinges, the hinge cover, I'm sorry. The hinge cover only has one way to go on. If you try to put it in the other way, the holes won't line up. So I got it this way. One thing you should pay attention to is that the grounding cable here goes through that central hole in the left hinge. If it doesn't, you'll have a lot of trouble getting the screen back together. So once that's all in place, another thing you have to pay attention to is that the monitor cable goes in front of these 2 plastic tabs. So that's in place, and then you grab the hinge, and I like to start from the front. So get the tabs stuck in there on the front end with the hinge wide open, and then on the back and underneath you can check the positioning of the ribbon cable, see if everything's okay. And once that's in place, you can close it and then start snapping this into the back of the hinge into place, which is a little trickier than you'd expect. But once it's in, you should have the screen opening and folding correctly. And then you can put the two plastic tabs. Second plastic tab? Here we are. Two plastic tabs on each side of the hinge. These are interchangeable. They're exactly the same on both sides. You just have to be careful that, and I like to do this again with it closed, you just have to be careful that they line up with the monitor hinge. And that's it. That's the top of the screen, reassembled, put back together, and now we can continue with the bottom and the motherboard and getting everything into place. So one final step to reassembling the HP 95LX as far as getting the two halves together is to get the hinges in place. And they're pretty easy to do. You just get them on the end of a screwdriver, like so. And so you can see it. It's got the little 4 little feet on one end, and the kind of like 2 ramps on each side on the other end. The ramp side is what goes towards the bottom of the HP 95LX, and the feet kind of drop in, and you just twist it, lock it into place. And there's another one on the other side. There you go. And that's pretty much it. We can move on to assembling the base of the unit and get the motherboard in place and the ribbon cable connected. Okay, so we're ready to put the motherboard into the base and then get everything sandwiched back together. The motherboard, you're going to have to be careful with the power connector. It fits into this little gap here, and the ferrite donut goes underneath the legs. And then everything kind of just slides into place with the motherboard. Be careful that the speaker wire goes underneath the battery wire. So otherwise it won't go into place. And kind of push the speaker wire towards the back, and you'll see why in a second. So with that done, everything should kind of just slide in, and the motherboard is down. The power connector's in place, the ferrite donut is underneath, and then we do the speaker part. The speaker has a guide here for the wire. You can just kind of push the wire into there and then move this down, and then there's a tab that the red and black speaker wires come out of and down into the cavity here of the case, where underneath where the PCMCIA card goes in. The speakers themselves have a specific orientation here. They have and it goes with the wires down, and you have there's 3 holes on each side, and you want the holes, 2 of the holes to be top and bottom, and the wide area between them to be side to side, because you have plastic tabs underneath that just kind of fits into place. As far as the battery connectors go, you have to make sure that the wire is outside, so it's all inside of the compartment. Same thing on this end. There you go. That goes down, and then the shielding goes on top. So the next part is to attach the bottom and top of the screens and get the screen connector in place. Alright, so for the screen connector, just like on the other end, you have a connector with these tabs that you pull out, and you grab the connector, spread it out, get that into place, and be a little tricky because there's not much space to work with, but I think that's it. There you go. Should be all the way in. You shouldn't see any metal sticking out from the connector. And then you just push the tabs back down to lock it in place. All right, and that's pretty much it. You just drop the top and bottom. There you go. And the unit is all back together and ready to go, ready to be wired into place. So screws in the holes. Star screwdriver and everything down. Put the battery cover back in. On the other side, we have the IR cover. Oh wait, you have the backup battery holder first. There we go. IR cover on top of it. And little plastic rubber feet go on top. And there you go, fully assembled HP95LX ready to go. And haha, addendum. I've completely forgot to put the hinge snap back in. It's not terrible. You don't have to take the whole thing apart. Take the plastic front off the front. Take the 4 screws off, and you can unsnap the top of the screen. You might need to use a screwdriver to get that out. There you go. And then the hinge will drop feet first into the back of the HP95LX. Just put it down. It's a bit easier to do this with tweezers. Down into place. Put the hinge back. Obviously, put the screen screws back in. All right, the cover back on. And now your HP95LX is ready to go. Locks into place. And it's all done.